Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. Got a lot to cover today. Glad to have you. President Trump warned that we are, quote, screwed if the U.S. Supreme Court rules against his emergency tariffs. The court is expected to take action this week, possibly as early as Wednesday. Senator Mark Kelly, a retired naval officer, is suing the War Department as well as War Secretary Pete Hegseth over the agency's actions to demote him and cut his retirement pay for urging military service members to refuse illegal orders. Remember the video, the message with other leading Democrats? We have the latest on this ongoing feud between Kelly and the Trump administration. Things keep getting crazier in Minneapolis. I know I say that every day, but they do. The latest, Nick Sortor, the guy who exposed Hilton in Minnesota, said in a video posted on X that his car windows were smashed and he was forced to flee as protesters surrounded him. And the South Carolina legislature is back to work this week. Joining us is Representative John McCravy to give us an overview of what priorities will be in year 2 of this session.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
President Trump declared yesterday that the U.S. would be screwed if the Supreme Court rules against his reciprocal tariff policies, arguing that the feds would have to pay back billions in revenue collected over the past year. Trump wrote on Truth Social, if the Supreme Court rules against the United States of America on this national security bonanza, we're screwed, in all caps. He said the actual numbers that we would have to pay back if, for any reason, the Supreme Court were to rule against the United States of America on tariffs would be many hundreds of billions of dollars. He went on to say that doesn't include the amount of payback that countries and companies would require for the investments they are making on building plants, factories, and equipment for the purpose of being able to avoid the payment of tariffs. Now, the president made the argument that when these investments are added, we're talking about trillions of dollars, it would be a complete mess and almost impossible for our country to pay. It's a pretty dim view if you look at it. He said anybody who says that it can be quickly and easily done would be making a false, inaccurate, or totally misunderstood answer to this very large and complex question. He said it may not be possible, but if it were, it would be dollars that would be so large that it would take many years to figure out what number we're talking about and even who, when, and where to pay. Now, the Supreme Court, and what has brought this whole conversation to a head, the Supreme Court is expected to rule possibly tomorrow, Wednesday, on whether President Trump could use emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs announced back in April. You remember? It included a 10% baseline for most countries, higher rates that took effect in August for nations with which the U.S. has a trade deficit. The president used those tariffs to, let's just be honest here, to strong-arm most major trading partners into stiff concessions, including pledges to invest in the U.S., lower trade barriers for American goods, and a series of deals that also came with elevated rates on their products. Many of Trump's other major tariffs would continue if the Supreme Court rules against him, including vehicle and car parts tariffs, which have been up to 25%, his current 10% fentanyl tariff against China, and 50% tariffs on copper, steel, and aluminum. those duties were enacted under different legal authority, so they would not be affected regardless of how the Supreme Court rules this week. Now, we have to also understand that the tariffs, you may recall when President Trump was first sworn into office and back in the Oval Office, he made this a main part of getting back into control and trying to boost our economy. A lot of people argued, well, tariffs will be a doomsday. Tariffs will kill our economy. He was very sure that tariffs would bring many more jobs back to the U.S. We've already seen a lot of major manufacturers start new manufacturing facilities, building manufacturing facilities right here in the U.S. We've already seen jobs growth, and it's just the beginning. Obviously, when a company decides to start manufacturing a product in the U.S., it takes a little time. You got to find a location. You got to build the plant. You got to hire the employees. But we're seeing good benefits already, and they haven't even had time to fully implement the plan. Administration officials say that the president would seek to resurrect the reciprocal tariffs under new legal justifications should the Supreme Court rule against his emergency authority. But the federal government would still have to repay roughly $150 billion. That's an estimate. The case before the High Court, Learning Resources versus Trump, questions whether President Trump's tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act are an unconstitutional tax. The educational toy maker's case, if successful, would plunge the administration into, let's just say, a very confusing period of repaying the many businesses and merchants that saw higher levies. I don't know how you even do it. I don't know how you undo this. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, unlike the president, made the argument just this past week that repayments would not themselves be a major hurdle. He claimed that the Treasury is sitting on $774 billion cash right now. He told Reuters, "It won't be a problem if we have to do it, but I can tell you that if it happens, which I don't think it's going to," he said, "it's just a corporate boondoggle." Costco, who's suing the U.S. government, are they going to give the money back to their clients? Good question, because some people have made the argument that we've seen an increase in product because these companies have passed that on to their customer to cover the tariffs. The Treasury Secretary went on to say, we're not talking about the money all goes out in one day, probably over weeks, months, maybe even over a year or so. So Treasury Secretary Bessent doesn't seem to be as concerned about the payback as President Trump. Now, meanwhile, the president, for whatever reason, agreed to an interview with the New York Times. You probably heard about it. I probably haven't read it. Like me, you don't subscribe to the New York Times, but you probably heard that he would agree to sit down. That seems to be coming back to bite him. The Times is taking great pleasure of writing that during the interview, the president appeared to forget one of his major promises. Speaking of tariffs, you remember the president promised a $2,000 tariff-funded check to every American. Remember that? He even promised that it would probably be delivered sometime during the midterms. Well, here's the story. During this sit-down with the New York Times in the Oval Office, President Trump was asked directly, when will Americans get those checks? His initial response, and this is what the New York Times is making such a big deal, he said, and he seemed to be confused, "I did do that. When did I do that? That's not exactly the answers the voters are looking for. They're wanting to know if, in fact, we're going to get a $2,000 check." As I've said many times, I hope we don't. I don't think that's a good program. However, the New York Times point here is the president seemed to be confused about the fact that he had promised $2,000 tariff checks. Now, to be fair, he quickly recovered. And the president said he thought the reporter was referring to the $1,776 military bonus that went out to service members around the holidays. He then added, yes, $2,000 checks are still in the works, only now they're being pushed to the end of the year, he said, even though the president originally said that we might get them during or before the 2026 midterms. So, What is the holdup, if in fact they're still going to be coming? Well, the Trump administration says that tariff revenue will cover it, saying that it's substantial, that they'll and it's so substantial that they'll be able to follow through. But here's the catch. According to the New York Times and other reports, the numbers aren't adding up. According to custom data, as of September, tariffs have raised about $90 billion. But to send out $2,000 to most Americans, we're talking about a price tag of $600 billion. And that's what the New York Times has latched on to. They're saying, how do you send $2,000 to every American if you've only had $90 billion come in? We'll see. Again, I've never thought it was a good idea anyway, but a lot of people love the idea of getting a $2,000 check from the federal government. It's not your fault that losing weight is getting harder and harder. You're eating better, you're moving more, but your body isn't responding the way it used to. That's not willpower, that's metabolism. And believe me, I've learned so much about the metabolism from the folks at PhD Weight Loss, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Joey Hudson here. For many people, years of dieting quietly slows the metabolic system down, so the harder you try, the less progress you see. At PhD Weight Loss, they help people identify what's actually blocking fat loss, and they fix the root cause, not just count calories. If you want to understand why your body isn't cooperating, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Fix My Weight Loss to unlock the New Year's special. It's free, it's personalized, and it could explain everything. Call 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss. That's 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss to get started today. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Start the new year off right and fix your weight loss. All right, I feel like every day we have to at least dedicate a segment on what's happening in Minnesota, because the story from Minnesota just cuts right to the heart of something that the country is struggling in right now. And that's the line between protest and outright lawlessness. We learned of an incident that happened actually on Sunday where anti-ICE demonstrators in Minnesota didn't just chant slogans and wave their signs. According to video and some first-hand accounts, they literally swarmed the vehicle of conservative influencer Nick Sortor. They smashed windows in his car. They spray-painted his truck. They threw frozen water bottles. And then, and this part matters, they used vehicles to block and chase him as he tried to leave the area. Now, that's not political speech. That's not a peaceful protest. That's trying to use intimidation and violence to scare someone off. And if we're going to be honest, and we should be, this didn't come out of nowhere. Now, remember, Nick Sortor is the young man who did the video at the Hampton Inn that really blew the cover of Hilton initially when they were refusing hotel rooms to ICE officers. Now, this video and the photos that Nick Sortor posted on his social media sites shows the damage to his truck. It includes the smashed rear window and the graffiti that was sprayed across the back of his truck. Now, there's no situation where it's okay to smash the window of someone's vehicle, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. And it's certainly not acceptable to spray paint someone's vehicle either. Those are violent acts. They should be prosecuted. He says that protesters literally surrounded his vehicle. They were screaming obscenities. They threatened him and fellow influencer Cam Higbee, who was with him. At one point, Sortor says the crowd used cars to block his escape. So they weren't interested in just making a statement. They wanted to intimidate him. They wanted to scare him. They wanted to make him feel like he could not escape that area. They forced him to drive off the road to get around them. At one point, he says that the crowd used they chased him down the interstate. Now, let's just imagine that scenario. Not as a headline, but as a moment in this young man's life. You're inside a vehicle. A crowd surrounds you windows are breaking, objects are being thrown, people are yelling threats. Again, that's not activism, that's chaos. Sortor credits the Eagan Police Department with stepping in and protecting him. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but the bigger question is this. How did we get to the point where political protests regularly turn into mobs surrounding people's cars? And again, thank goodness Sortor or no one else was injured, but what if they had been? What if we'd had another situation like Renee Good, whom they're actually protesting now? And here's the thing you need to understand. This particular incident did not happen in isolation. It came just days after the fatal shooting of Renee Good, which, of course, as you know, happened during a federal immigration operation in Minneapolis, an event that has sparked protests, not just in Minnesota, but all across the country. We saw hundreds and hundreds of protests this past weekend. Federal officials say that Ms. Good weaponized her vehicle, attempted to run over an ICE agent. Democrats and activist groups strongly dispute that characterization. This is a very hot debate going on, and it deserves to be handled very carefully and factually. But here's where things go off the rails. Some of the activists, fueled by the inflammatory rhetoric from people like Governor Tim Walz, from people like the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, from people like the sheriff in Philadelphia, who is saying, basically it's our duty to stand up and protest. And when that mindset takes hold, when it is acceptable for other authorities to question the authority of ICE agents, to threaten the authority as to whether or not they should even be in their community, that's when problems can spread very quickly. And let's just draw a bright, clear line here. You have an absolute right to protest. Yes, you have freedom of speech. You have a right to criticize ICE. You have a right to oppose federal immigration policy if you like. If you don't like it that Donald Trump is sending these criminals, these murderers, these rapists back home, then, vote. Go vote. You're going to get a chance in 3 years to elect your next president. But the American people in 2024 said overwhelmingly, we want Donald Trump to go back into the Oval Office and to secure our borders and to get rid of those who came into our country illegally and who are breaking our laws. That was a very clear message. There's no gray area there. He won the popular vote. He won the electoral vote. So that was a mandate. Now, so yes, you have the right to protest and all. You don't have the right to smash someone's vehicle, to block roadways, to chase people on highways, to threaten their lives, to trap people inside vehicles, simply because you don't like the message that they are delivering to the American people. Nick Sortor's video outing that Hampton Inn has been viewed by millions of people. It basically cost that particular hotel their Hilton brand. They're no longer a Hampton Inn. Hilton sent a truck out and picked up that sign. They are no longer a authorized, licensed Hilton Hampton Inn property. Now, this is where leadership really matters. In Minnesota, you have elected officials. I mentioned Mayor Jacob Frey, who have spent years demonizing ICE, telling federal agents they're not welcome, assuring activists that the city will be a, quote, safe haven, these sanctuary cities. But those words have consequences. When leaders repeatedly paint law enforcement as villains, when they dismiss federal authority as illegitimate, when they refuse to condemn violent behavior clearly and immediately, call it what it is, some people take that as permission to escalate the situation, permission to interfere with these ICE agents. I mean, is it not crazy that you had a woman who lost her life last week because she was interfering with a law enforcement operation? She was blocking a road. And with the new video that we got over the weekend, too, it shows that this wasn't just a minute or so. She had been doing this throughout the day. But she lost her life. But you still have some of these idiots, and I'm going to call them an idiot. Nana Hudson would not like me calling people names, but you are an idiot if you stand in front of an ICE vehicle now after what happened last week. Tensions are high. You are an idiot if you think you can interfere with an ICE operation or any law enforcement operation for that matter, if it's your city police, if it's your sheriff's office. You don't interfere with law enforcement, period. End of sentence. Now, the other uncomfortable truth here is if this had been a left-wing activist surrounded by pro-ICE demonstrators rather than Nick Sortor, it would be wall-to-wall coverage. CNN would have been on the scene. Breaking news banners, panel discussions about political violence. But when conservative figures like Nick Sortor and Nick Shirley, when anti-ICE protesters cross into violence, the coverage softens. It's suddenly the law enforcement's problem. It's law enforcement's fault. The language changes. The urgency disappears. And look, Americans take notice of that because consistency matters. Either violence is wrong or it isn't. Even if you disagree with Nick Sortor, even if you despise conservative influencers, even if you oppose ICE entirely, this should still worry you because today it's an influencer. Tomorrow, maybe it's a journalist. Next week, it's a private citizen who said the wrong thing online. Maybe you posted something on Facebook about your support of ICE, and suddenly you find yourself in a public situation and you're being confronted because of a Facebook posting. When mobs decide who deserves safety and who doesn't, nobody is safe. You're not safe. I'm not safe. No one is safe. So what do we need to do? Where do we go from here? Well, there's got to be some accountability. Anyone who smashed property, blocked vehicles, or threatened lives, they need to be arrested. Politics don't change the law. Second, we need some clarity from leaders. They need to step up and make it clear that this is not acceptable. They need to condemn violence clearly. They need to stop pretending at mobs or movements, stop excusing criminal behavior because you like their cause. And there has to be honesty in the media. The media has to tell the full story, show the footage, describe what actually happened, not what fits their particular narrative. And this needs to start right away. We can't just keep letting this happen, folks. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Email's always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. South Carolina General Assembly gets back to work today. On our guest line, Representative John McCravy from Greenwood. How are you, sir? Welcome.
I'm doing great. And thank you for having me, Joey.
Always a pleasure. Of course, you guys are kicking off. This is year 2 of the session. This is an election year session with Republicans holding veto-proof majorities. So let's talk about some of the real priorities that you think you guys have, not only in the legislature in general, but the Republicans who are in Columbia to try to get some things done, I guess.
Well, that's correct. If we can just get the Republicans all together, I think we'll get a lot done. I think taxes are going to be number one. I think there was a big move last year to cut income taxes, and frankly, I hear more about property taxes than anything.
Yep.
We've got seniors who work all their lives to pay for their property, pay for their house, pay off the mortgage. And then one of them dies and a spouse dies, and the next thing they can't even afford to keep their house because of taxes, and they have to sell their house due to property tax. I call that a tax eviction. So we need to stop this tax eviction that's going on with a lot of seniors in our state. I proposed a bill called Property Tax Relief for Seniors Act, and it would basically you would pay no taxes on the first $1 million value of your home, of your primary home. So I think we need to do that for our people. I think that's a start. In addition to income tax, frankly, I'd love to do away with property tax altogether, but we got to do it we got to eat that elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what do you think the chances of something like that happening? I mean, look, I got a feeling there are a lot of people who fall into that senior category listening right now who are saying, yeah, that's exactly what we need.
Well, and, it just makes common sense because I asked I got the fiscal report on this. What would the fiscal impact be? And it's less than a third of a penny of sales tax. It's equivalent to that in South Carolina. So we could replace all those taxes, those property taxes for seniors, for a third of a penny of a sales tax. I mean, that just makes sense to me. And I started talking about this last year and the year before, and I've started hearing other people talk about it now. I heard the majority leader in the Senate start saying, I'm hearing more about property tax than I am income tax.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll catch on and we'll get something done, Joey. I mean, That's the kind of thing people need to talk to their representatives about it.
Yeah. Well, that's if you're listening today, call your representative, and if you fall into that category, tell them that you'd like some property tax relief. Look, I'll certainly be making some phone calls for sure. The governor will be rolling out his executive budget, which you guys obviously are in charge of the budget. So these are recommendations and things on his wish list. But one of the things he's going to be asking you guys to do is to spend an additional $1 billion on roads and infrastructure. Where do you think that's going to head?
Well, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of waste in our government, and that's where some of it is, I think, frankly, in the DOT. We've got to clean that out. And I know, maybe it's not real popular among some people. We need to doge our government. Yeah. I think we can get more efficient, and we can cut down on waste. And there's still work to do in South Carolina. We do balance our budget every year, unlike the federal government. But, if we're going to have huge surpluses like this, billions of dollars in surpluses, we need to give it back. We need to cut taxes. And, we've thrown money at these roads for years and years now. Every year I've been there, they've thrown surpluses at roads. And I just got to question whether we're being efficient with that money. So I'm in favor of doing all we can. We got to fix our bridges. I know that's an issue. We gave hundreds of millions last year to fix the bridges, and so we've got to get them fixed. That helps our economy to fix those rural bridges, especially because we've got like logging trucks that have to take roundabout routes that cuts into their profit and cuts into their time, because we have bridges that can't sustain a full truck. So we got to fix that. I realize that, but I think there's also money to be saved.
Yeah. And
I think another thing is the governor says, and I agree with him, is we need to raise the final $50,000, make it $50,000 for teachers who are just starting. We need to get up to that national average, and we're already at the Southeast average. But I think that final raise is important. I'm going to support that. And speaking of education, I think you're going to see also DEI getting taken out of our schools finally. I think you're going to see in our education, in the education realm, we're going to finally look. We worked hard to get the men out of girls' sports in schools, but we still haven't gotten them out of the bathrooms. Yeah. We got to pass this privacy law that gets men pretending to be girls out of the bathrooms, and we saw that stuff happen in Charleston. It's not a pervasive problem yet, but it will be if we don't pass a law. So So it's time to pass that law as well.
Yeah.
And of course, school choice, we need to do that as well. Joey, I did want to say something about a bill I proposed, and it may be the first in the nation. But Donald Trump, his education administration sent out a compact to higher education schools saying, if you want federal funding, you need to agree with us on what you're going to do in your school. And most of it was taking DEI out of these public universities and colleges and private universities and colleges as well. I think we need to pass that in South Carolina. So I think we need to compliment Donald Trump's proposal, and we need to mandate Clemson and USC and our other public colleges to agree with the education compact that came out of the Trump administration. So I have a bill that will require that. I think it's first in the nation.
Yeah.
And I think it supports what we all know, and that's we don't need to pay taxpayer money for discrimination policies in schools.
Yep. Absolutely. Representative John McCravey is our guest today, and we're talking about some of the issues that he and his colleagues will be taking up today and as they start the new session. Representative McCravey, in a recent article in the Post and Courier, House leadership said that social issues will require, and these are their words, tight rein management. Talk with us. I know you're a proponent of life, and there's still some work to be done with abortion issues. Where do you think we're headed in that direction?
Well, Joey, when you hit that, you're hitting my wheelhouse, and frankly, I've been very disappointed in our legislature for not putting the Human Life Protection Act back up. And it's a reasonable bill that just protects our unborn children to conception, but it preserves all the medical exceptions. It preserves IVF, birth control. It doesn't prosecute women, etc. And that bill has passed twice before, and frankly, we just don't have the stomach for it right now in the House or the Senate, as far as I can see. So I'm very disappointed in that. But I don't ever give up. I didn't give up on the heartbeat bill when they said it couldn't be passed. And the family caucus got behind it, and it got passed. Yeah. And I think our family caucus is behind this bill. So never say never. Right. But it doesn't look great. Yeah. But we're also fighting. You talk about social issues, huge special interests with gigantic amounts of money. I'm talking about millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion, are coming into our state. They want us to gamble. They want us to smoke marijuana, and they want us to have drive-through liquor 24/7. And the casinos, they want casinos, and there's big money. They're giving money to. They're starting. The casino people started a PAC. They've got big money into that. Well, I've been told they got $2 or $3 million already put into it. They've got 62 lobbyists last year that were all about gambling and casinos down here. And, the marijuana lobby, we got that going on. And then we got the huge alcohol lobby that from this Diageo, this foreign corporation that owns all the liquor labels that makes billions of dollars. So what they want to do, somebody told me this, and I don't know if you've ever watched It's a Wonderful Life. Yep. But if you have, somebody summarized it like this: we have a huge invasion in our state that wants to turn our state into Pottersville, and instead of Bedford Falls, they want it to be Pottersville, and we need to stop that. I've talked to a lot of people who retired here in South Carolina. And a lot of them have retired to my area around Lake Greenwood and things. And what they told me is, please make sure the good Christian conservative laws stay in place in our state, because that's why we moved here. We moved to South Carolina because we know you're a different state. You care about social issues, Christian issues, and you have a tradition of Christian values in the state. So I promised them I'm going to work to make sure we stay that way, that we don't turn into a Las Vegas or a New Jersey or something like that. We need to keep South Carolina place to raise families.
Yep. Representative John McCravey, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. We're going to count on you to keep us informed throughout the session, and we'll be checking back in with you real soon.
We'll do it, Joey, and I'm excited, man. Let's go.
Absolutely. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.